I first started designing a blowback-operated, magazine-fed design late in 2013. This is as far as the design got. It would have probably suffered from flimsy, low-capacity magazines and a very high rate of fire. It really wasn't worth pursuing. That was until I met Stealth the Unknown years later. He had an idea for a blowback-operated, select-fire, shell-ejecting design that could also be field-stripped. This sounded too good to be true, so I was eager to see his design. The 8-spoke rotor may not sound like a big deal, but more spokes means more capacity, as much as 30 shots. Anyone familiar with assault rifles will recognize the trigger pack. This is like nothing else ever designed in the world of rubber band guns. This system was hammer-fired, which was not only incredibly realistic, but it also allowed for burst fire. To top it off, there was also a shell ejecting feature, as well as the fast disassembly. Still, I had concerns. Real automatic weapons use high-pressure hot gases to operate their mechanics. Mine would only have a single rubber band to overcome the bolt spring, hammer spring, releaser, as well as eject shells. I figured out this would either not work at all or be very unreliable at best. Still, I gave it a go. I modified the design to iron out some errors and make it easier to build. I removed the shell ejection system, figuring I could do that later. Without any further ado, I will show you the video that I have of the G11 LAR. This is a 24-shot burst. Oh. I think we've just gotten a critical failure. Yeah. Not sure if you can see that, but the rotor there has just broken off very... That's not good. Let's try that again. There we go. So even with that damaged rotor, it otherwise worked perfectly. Oh yeah, it's pretty nasty. So, selector switch with its leaf spring there. Rear position, obviously safe. Trigger doesn't move at all. One down, semi-auto. That allows both the trigger and the semi-auto sear to move upward. The semi-auto sear catches on the hammer, so that when the bolt is in battery, it'll fire. And upon return, it's caught by that sear. Works well. And forward position is full auto. Allows the trigger to move, but not the semi-auto sear, as you know. Works perfectly. And of course the auto sear also works, as you've seen. As I suspected, the G11 LAR was unreliable at best. Despite that, I still think I owe a lot to Stealth the Unknown for being the catalyst that led to the AR2. If you're interested in the inner workings of real guns, I suggest you take a look at his channel. His explanations of complex mechanics are second to none, so I'll put a link at the end of this video. The failure of the G11 LAR is really what made the AR2 such an excellent design. From the ground up, it was designed to be simple and solid. There was no select fire system at all, and a very simple bolt hold open device. The hammer fire system was completely removed, as was the shell ejection, for the sake of reliability. The launcher was a separate system, but even this was kept to the bare minimum. If you've gotten to this point and you're still wondering how the whole thing works, I'm going to start explaining it, starting with the magazine. Now inside it is the 8-spoke rotor and an escapement mechanism. Pretty simple. It'll be easier to show you this with an assembled magazine. So the bolt needs to do two things. It needs to press this releaser, and it also needs to catch a rubber band from the top of this rotor, at least to work as a blowback. So upon pressing that, it releases one rubber band, which I've caught with my finger, and stops the rotor there. Releasing it just resets the mechanism. So what the bolt is going to do is it's going to travel back and hit that releaser. Once it does that, the hook on the bolt will catch the rubber band that's released from here, and the tension of that will bring the bolt forward until it's released. The other really critical part is the bolt. And this is also in itself pretty simple. We have the sear at the front and a release hook on top. So the trigger is going to press the sear, and the rubber band, the chambered rubber band, is then going to be released from this. And that will all reset automatically. So inside, pretty simple. Have the sear sprung with a tiny rubber band onto the release hook. We also have a small pin to hold the bolt rubber band, this guide just so it doesn't wobble side to side, and the bolt handle. So what I've done here is I've stripped back the AR2 to just its bare bones basic components. Also got a magazine loaded with 10 shots, normally it would hold 25. This is not a select fire design despite the selector switch, it's full auto only. In this position it engages the sear on the ping pong ball launcher. If I flip it this way, it lifts away from that sear and engages this little push rod instead. Notice with the bolt forward, that push rod activates the sear on the bolt itself. So, to load it, you need to push the bolt forward, at which point the bolt hold open will grab it. Next you angle the front of the magazine in and bring the lower one back until it locks. When it locks, the magazine, as you can see, is going to push on the hold open, will release the bolt and hopefully chamber the first shot automatically. Just like that. So what the bolt has done there is moved back, hammered on the releaser as I showed before, and picked up a rubber band from the rotor. Once I pull the trigger, what's going to happen is this push rod is going to move back onto the sear, which will release this part. I'll show you that slowly. So I've released the sear, this thing will then tip forward and release the band. At this point there's no tension overcoming the bolt spring over here. So the bolt is going to move back, pick another shot up and travel forward. Assuming I have the trigger held down, it will release it again, just like that. So I'll show that in real time for the rest of the shots. And that's how it works. To reload, you would pull the magazine out, push the bolt forward and drop a new one in. The launcher is a simple muzzle loader. One ball loaded in here, you pull back the bolt and it's ready to go. It locks in place with this sear here, so pulling back on this will release the ball. Now the launcher fits just in there, so you can see that with this selector in the correct position, like that, it will now engage that sear and it will disengage from this push rod, as I mentioned before. Single shot only, but there is a storage compartment in here. Originally it was going to be magazine fed, but instead all this does is store extra ping pong balls. Just like that. It stores up to 4.
Over there, I'll cover you.
In many ways, the C-RAR returns to the original design of the LAR. It is fully ambidextrous and easy to field strip, two features that the AR2 was sorely lacking. The bolt and magazine, however, were taken almost directly from the AR2. The C-RAR is pretty much an AR2 without the launcher. The really slick part of it is the disassembly. First thing we'll do is remove the magazine and then push the bolt forward. Next we're going to remove this pin. It can be unscrewed partly, pushed out and finished off. And with that head protruding, it gives you something to grab it by. Next up, the top cover comes off. That just is slid forward a little bit and removed. Notice that contains part of the magazine release system. Otherwise, that's it. Pretty simple. Next up, we can hang onto the bolt, hit the catch, ease the bolt forward, and slowly release the bolt catch so that we don't lose the spring. A bit of wobbling, we can also remove the bolt. Takes a little bit of wiggling and jiggling, but eventually it comes straight out. You can lift it out. The spring is simply hooked onto the stock. And that is it. Fully field stripped. Inside here is simply the trigger and the magazine button. Not much going on there, I've never needed to take it apart. And the bolt catch. Exact same design on the AR2. Again, not something you need to remove.